8 years old, and he already knew more about mortality than most adults would learn in a lifetime. When little Jake Morrison walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, he carried with him not just the dreams typical of childhood, but the profound wisdom that comes from spending half your life in hospital rooms, learning words like chemotherapy and remission before you can properly tie your shoes. Simon Cowell thought he was about to see another young performer with supportive family cheering from the wings. He had no idea he was about to witness someone prove that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about choosing joy, even when you have every reason to be terrified. When Jake began to sing about finding happiness in the darkest places, about smiling when everything hurts, about being grateful for each day even when those days are numbered, Simon Cowell realized he wasn't just watching a performance, he was receiving a master class in living from someone who had already faced death and chosen life again and again with the pure wisdom that only children possess. Let me take you back to the moment before Jake Morrison showed the world that sometimes the most powerful performances come from those who understand that every breath is a gift, every smile is a victory, and every song might be your last chance to spread happiness while you still can. It was Thursday evening at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles, and America's Got Talent was in the middle of what would become its most emotionally transformative season yet. The familiar energy buzzed through the venue. 3,400 audience members filling the red velvet seats, many of them from children's hospitals, pediatric cancer organizations, and Make-A-Wish Foundation volunteers who had heard about Jake's audition through medical and charitable networks. Simon Cowell sat at the judges' table in his signature black t-shirt and perfectly tailored blazer, but tonight his expression carried unusual tenderness. The producers had briefed him about this particular contestant in terms that had prepared him for something heartbreaking yet inspiring. They'd explained that he was about to meet someone whose perspective on life had been shaped by experiences no child should ever face. Sofia Vergara was unusually quiet, having been deeply moved during the pre-show meeting with Jake and his family. She had spent time with children in similar situations through her charitable work, but there was something about Jake's pure spirit that had touched her differently. Heidi Klum and Howie Mandel were both subdued, understanding that they were about to witness something that would challenge their assumptions about suffering, childhood, and what it means to be brave. Terry Crews had spent extra time preparing for this introduction, knowing that his words needed to celebrate Jake's courage without highlighting the tragedy of his situation. The evening had already been emotional, but everyone involved in the production understood that what was about to happen would be profound. This wasn't about discovering talent in the traditional sense. This was about witnessing someone who had learned to find joy in impossible circumstances, to create hope where medical prognosis offered little. Backstage, Jake Morrison sat in the contestant waiting area, but he didn't sit like most 8-year-olds. His small body showed the visible effects of 2 years of aggressive cancer treatment. He was thin, fragile, completely bald from chemotherapy, with an IV port visible under his bright red superhero t-shirt. Despite his obvious illness, Jake radiated an energy that seemed to contradict his medical condition. Not the manic energy of someone trying to deny reality, but the genuine joy of someone who had learned to appreciate every moment. At 8 years old, Jake looked both younger and older than his age. Younger because of his small stature and the innocent way he approached the world, older because his eyes held knowledge about pain, hospitals, and mortality that most children never encounter. Beside him sat Linda Morrison, his mother, and the woman who had spent the last 2 years learning to balance hope with heartbreak, advocacy with acceptance. Linda was 42 years old, a former elementary school teacher who had given up her career to become Jake's full-time caregiver, medical advocate, and keeper of normalcy in a life that had become anything but normal. "How are you feeling, buddy?" Linda asked gently, checking the small medical bag she always carried. medications, emergency contact information, instructions for Jake's care that had become second nature after countless hospital visits. "I'm super excited, Mom," Jake replied with the authentic enthusiasm that had carried him through treatments that would break most adults. His voice carried the slight rasp that came from medications and procedures, but his excitement was unmistakable. "I get to sing my happy song for everyone." The journey to this moment had been a series of medical battles, small victories, and the kind of childhood wisdom that emerges when young minds are forced to grapple with adult realities. Jake had been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia just after his 6th birthday, turning what should have been a celebration into the beginning of a fight for his life. The first year had been the hardest. Intensive chemotherapy that made him violently ill, long hospital stays that separated him from friends and normal childhood experiences, procedures that were painful and frightening even with the gentlest medical staff. Jake had lost his hair, his energy, his ability to play like other children, and at times his hope. But somewhere in the midst of the treatment, Jake had discovered something that would define his approach to illness. Music made everything better, not just for him, but for the other children in the cancer ward, for the nurses who worked with sick kids every day, for the parents who sat beside hospital beds trying to stay strong for their children. It started with humming. Jake would hum to distract himself during procedures, to fill the silence during long infusions, to comfort other children who were scared. The humming became singing, the singing became original songs, and the songs became Jake's way of turning his cancer experience into something that could help rather than just hurt. "I realize that being sick doesn't mean you have to be sad," Jake had told a child life specialist during one of his treatments. "I can be sick and happy at the same time, and when I'm happy, other people get happy too." Jake's songs were simple, innocent, and profoundly wise in the way that only children's perspectives can be. He wrote about finding good things in bad days, about being grateful for ice cream when your stomach finally felt better, about how hospital beds could be spaceships if you used your imagination right. Linda had watched her son transform from a typical 6-year-old into someone with an almost mystical understanding of what mattered in life. Where she saw medical challenges, Jake saw opportunities to spread joy. Where she felt fear about his prognosis, Jake felt excitement about each day he felt well enough to sing. The decision to audition for America's Got Talent had come during one of Jake's better periods, when his most recent scans showed stable disease and his energy levels had improved enough for small adventures. Jake had seen the show on television during his long recovery periods and announced that he wanted to sing for Simon so he could make lots of people happy at once. "Jake Morrison," called Maria, one of the production assistants, her voice carrying special warmth since everyone on staff had been moved by Jake's story during the preliminary interviews. The entire production team had been briefed on Jake's condition and his remarkable attitude, understanding that they were facilitating something much more significant than a typical audition. Jake stood up carefully, his movements showing the caution of someone whose body couldn't always be trusted to cooperate, but his face lit up with the kind of pure excitement that only children can generate. "Remember what we practiced?" Linda said, kneeling down to Jake's eye level and adjusting his superhero shirt, his favorite because, as he explained, superheroes help people feel better, just like music does. "I remember, Mom," Jake replied with the patience of someone who had learned to accept reminders about medical necessities. "If I get tired, I can sit down. If I don't feel good, I can stop. But I'm going to sing my best happy song because that's what makes people smile." And what's the most important thing?" Linda asked, fighting back tears as she asked the question they had practiced. "To have fun and spread happiness," Jake recited, then added with his characteristic wisdom, "because even if I'm sick, I can still make other people feel good, and that makes me feel good too." Terry Crew's voice carried across the theater with unusual gentleness. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jake Morrison." Then the lights came up, and Jake began walking toward the stage with the careful but determined gait of someone who had learned to navigate the world with a body that didn't always cooperate. As he walked, audience members immediately noticed his obvious illness, the complete lack of hair, the small frame, the medical port visible under his shirt, but also his incredible spirit, the bright smile that seemed to light up the entire theater. The audience's reaction was immediate and emotional. Many people began crying before Jake even reached the microphone, understanding instinctively that they were about to witness something extraordinary. Parents in the audience instinctively held their children closer, suddenly aware of how precious and fragile childhood really was. Simon leaned forward, studying Jake with deep respect and growing emotion. There was something about this little boy that commanded attention, not through performance or charisma, but through the simple dignity of someone who had faced impossible challenges and chosen joy anyway. "Good evening, Jake," Terry said warmly as Jake reached the center of the stage, where a microphone had been adjusted to his height and a small stool was available if he needed to rest. "Good evening," Jake replied with genuine enthusiasm, his voice carrying the slight rasp from his treatments but radiating authentic happiness. "I'm so excited to be here. Tell us about yourself, buddy. How old are you?" "I'm 8 years old, and I live with my mom in Ohio," Jake said, then added, with the straightforward honesty that children possess, "I have leukemia, which means I have cancer, but I still love to sing songs that make people happy." The simple directness of his statement sent a wave of emotion through the theater. This wasn't a child seeking pity or trying to be brave for the cameras. This was just Jake stating his reality with the matter-of-fact acceptance he had developed over 2 years of living with serious illness. "You've been fighting cancer?" Terry asked gently. "Yep, for 2 years now," Jake replied, his tone suggesting he was discussing something no more dramatic than his favorite color. "I have to take lots of medicine and go to the hospital a lot, but I learned that music makes everything better. When I sing, I feel happy, and when other people hear me sing, they feel happy too." Simon found himself completely absorbed by Jake's perspective on experiences that would devastate most adults. This wasn't denial or forced positivity. This was genuine wisdom about how to find joy in impossible circumstances. "That's amazing, Jake. What kind of songs do you like to sing?" Terry continued. "I write my own songs about being happy, even when things are hard," Jake explained, his voice growing more animated as he talked about his passion. "Like when I'm in the hospital getting my medicine, I sing songs about how the medicine is like superhero juice that makes me stronger. And when I feel sick, I sing about all the good things I can still do." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word from this little boy who had somehow figured out secrets about happiness that eluded most adults. "Can you tell us about the song you're going to sing tonight?" Terry asked. Jake's face lit up even brighter, if that was possible. "It's called Still Happy, and it's about how even when your body is sick, your heart can still be full of good things. I wrote it for all the other kids in the hospital who sometimes feel sad about being sick." "That sounds like a very special song, Jake," Terry said, his own voice thick with emotion. "It is," Jake agreed, "because I learned that being sick doesn't mean you can't be happy. You can be both at the same time, and when you choose to be happy, even when it's hard, you help other people choose happiness too." "All right, Jake," Terry said, stepping back with genuine anticipation mixed with concern for this brave little boy. "The stage is yours." Jake positioned himself at the microphone with the careful attention of someone who had learned to manage his energy wisely. For a moment, he stood completely still, and then he began to sing in a voice that was pure, innocent, and filled with more wisdom than seemed possible from someone so young. "I wake up every morning and I don't know how I'll feel. My body might be tired and the hurt might be real. But I look out my window and I see the sky so blue, and I remember all the happy things that I can always do." Simon's expression was already changing dramatically. This wasn't just a sick child being brave. This was someone who had discovered profound truths about resilience and joy. I'm still happy, even when things hurt. I'm still grateful for every good thing first. The medicine tastes yucky and I'm tired all the time, but my heart is full of music and my spirit's going to shine. The audience was transfixed, many openly sobbing as they witnessed this demonstration of courage that transcended age, circumstance, and medical prognosis. My hair fell out from treatment, but my smile's still there. My body might be little, but my love is everywhere I sing for other children who are scared and feeling blue, because happiness is something that we all can choose to do. Sophia was crying openly, recognizing that she was witnessing someone teach lessons about gratitude and perspective that most adults never learned. Heidi was leaning forward, completely absorbed by the emotional honesty and wisdom coming from this 8-year-old boy. Howie was unusually still, understanding that he was experiencing something that transcended entertainment and entered the realm of the miraculous. As Jake reached the bridge of his song, his voice grew stronger, more confident, as if the act of singing was giving him energy instead of taking it away. The doctors say I'm fighting, and I guess that might be true, but I don't feel like fighting. I just feel like being you. Happy, hopeful, grateful for each day that I'm alive, because every day I'm singing is a day that I can thrive. The final chorus was the most powerful, Jake's voice soaring with a strength that seemed impossible, given his small frame and serious illness. I'm still happy, and that's my superpower. I'm still grateful for every single hour. Life is good and beautiful, even when it's hard, and sharing joy with other people heals my heart. When Jake finished singing, the silence in the theater was profound. Then something unprecedented happened. The audience didn't just applaud, they gave Jake a standing ovation that lasted for over 5 minutes, with many people openly weeping as they recognized that they had just witnessed one of the most profound demonstrations of human courage and wisdom they would ever see. But the most powerful reaction was happening at the judges' table. Simon Cowell was not just crying, he was completely overcome, his usual composed demeanor replaced by raw emotion as he processed what he had just witnessed. When he finally spoke, Simon's voice was barely audible, but his microphone picked up every emotion-laden word. "Jake," he said, and had to pause to collect himself. "I need you to understand what you just did." Jake looked at him with the patient attention of someone who had learned to listen carefully to adults, especially when they seemed emotional. "You didn't just sing a song, you didn't just show us your talent, you just taught every person in this theater and everyone watching at home the most important lesson about life, about happiness, about courage that any of us will ever receive." Simon's voice was carrying more emotion than anyone had ever heard from him in decades of judging performances. "You showed us that happiness isn't about having perfect circumstances. It's about choosing joy even when everything suggests you should be sad. You proved that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about facing impossible challenges and still finding reasons to smile." The audience was hanging on every word, understanding that Simon was articulating something profound about what they had all just witnessed. But most importantly, Jake, you just became a teacher for everyone watching. You showed adults how to be grateful, how to find joy in small things, how to spread happiness even when you're struggling. Jake was listening intently, his 8-year-old mind processing Simon's words with the seriousness that illness had taught him to apply to important moments. "Thank you, Mr. Simon," Jake said simply. "I'm happy that my song made you feel something good. That's what music is supposed to do." Simon walked to his golden buzzer, but then paused and looked at his fellow judges, understanding that this moment deserved recognition beyond individual choice. Actually, what Jake just shared with us, this demonstration of courage, this lesson in finding happiness despite impossible circumstances, this deserves recognition from all of us. All 4 judges stood up and moved to their golden buzzers simultaneously, understanding that they were witnessing something that transcended competition and entered the realm of human inspiration. Jake Morrison, Simon announced, his voice carrying across the theater with deep respect and love. You receive a unanimous golden buzzer, not just for your beautiful song, but for teaching us all what it really means to be happy, grateful, and brave. All four judges pressed their buzzers together, and golden confetti exploded from the ceiling, raining down on Jake, who looked up at it with pure wonder and began laughing with delight, the sound of an 8-year-old boy finding magic in an unexpected moment. Linda appeared from the wings, tears streaming down her face as she rushed to embrace her son on stage, understanding that Jake had just shared his gift with the world in exactly the way he had hoped. "I did good, Mom?" Jake asked, still glowing with excitement from his performance and the falling confetti. "You did perfect, sweetheart," Linda replied. "You just made the whole world a little happier." 3 months later, Jake Morrison won America's Got Talent, but more importantly, his story sparked a global movement about pediatric cancer awareness and the importance of supporting children and families facing serious illnesses. His performance video became one of the most watched and shared videos in internet history, viewed over 1 billion times worldwide. The Jake Morrison Foundation was established, providing music therapy programs in children's hospitals, supporting families dealing with pediatric cancer, and funding research into childhood leukemia treatments. Jake became a spokesperson for childhood cancer awareness, appearing at medical conferences and charity events to share his message about finding happiness in difficult circumstances. But perhaps the most significant impact was on the thousands of children and families facing similar battles who found hope and strength in Jake's example, learning that illness doesn't have to mean the end of joy, that childhood can still be beautiful even when it's complicated by serious medical challenges. Jake's subsequent album, Happy Songs for Hard Days, became a bestseller, with proceeds supporting pediatric cancer research and family support programs. His simple, honest songs about finding joy in difficult circumstances became anthems for anyone facing challenges that seemed too big to overcome. The lesson Jake Morrison taught the world that night is profound. Happiness is not dependent on circumstances. It's a choice that can be made even in the most difficult situations. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing joy, gratitude, and love even when everything suggests you should choose despair. Simon Cowell learned that true talent isn't just about technical skill or entertainment value. Sometimes it's about wisdom, about the ability to transform personal struggle into universal inspiration, about having a voice that can heal hearts, even when your own heart has been tested beyond what should be humanly possible. And Jake proved that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths, that childhood wisdom can teach adults everything they need to know about living fully, and that the most powerful performances come from those who understand that every day is a gift, every smile is a victory, and every song might be your last chance to make the world a little brighter while you still can.